On a frozen Milwaukee road, bullies thought a storm would hide their sins. A mother, a child, no witnesses, no escape. But God does not need noise to deliver justice. He sent a man who did not shout, and a dog who did not bark. And in that silence, evil made its first mistake. What happened next was not luck. It was consequence. It was justice catching up in the snow. If you believe God still works through ordinary people in extraordinary moments, this story is for you. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from. And subscribe to the channel for more true stories of faith, courage, and justice that arrive right on time. Wheel tracks on the snow, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The winter night pressed down on Milwaukee as snow thickened and wind from Lake Michigan cut through streets like a blade. Jack Mercer drove with both hands steady on the wheel, easing the pickup forward as if the road itself were something alive and unpredictable. He was just over 40, tall and broad through the shoulders, the kind of build that came from years of carrying weight and responsibility rather than vanity. His left knee moved stiffly when he shifted his foot, an old injury from overseas that never healed cleanly. It had ended his active duty and reshaped the way he walked through the world. Jack's face was angular, weathered beyond his age. Dark stubble framed a jaw that rarely softened, and faint lines cut deep beside eyes that had learned to stay alert even when the world pretended to be calm. Those eyes, brown and steady, had once scanned deserts and alleyways where hesitation meant death. Now they scanned snowdrifts, black ice, and shadows between streetlights. He wore no uniform, but the posture remained. A Navy SEAL did not forget how to carry himself. He only learned when not to show it. He wore what he always wore in winter. A navy coat that reached mid-thigh, thick enough to block the wind. Beneath it, a red and black flannel shirt worn thin at the cuffs. Faded jeans, brown boots scarred by years of hard ground. It was not a disguise. It was simply who he was when he stopped trying to be anyone else. In the passenger seat sat Ranger. The German Shepherd was 5 years old, black and tan, powerful without being bulky. His chest was broad, his legs long and sure, his movements controlled and economical. His ears stood erect, catching sounds long before Jack could hear them. Amber eyes reflected the dashboard lights, intelligent and unreadable. Ranger wore a black harness snug against his frame, the white patch on the side clear even in the dim cab light. Service dog, do not pet. Ranger had been trained for silence. He did not bark at noise or movement. When he reacted, it meant something had crossed an invisible line. Jack was heading home, not in a hurry, not lingering either. He had learned the cost of rushing and the danger of drifting. The city around him blurred into white and gray, streets half erased by snow, familiar landmarks softened into shapes without edges. Milwaukee in winter demanded respect. People who did not give it often paid quickly. Ranger shifted. Not a bark, not a growl, just tension. His body stiffened, muscles coiling beneath his coat, head lifting slightly as his gaze fixed forward. Jack felt it before he consciously registered it. His foot eased off the gas, instincts rising like an old language he still spoke fluently. Headlights swept across the road ahead. A sedan sat sideways across the right lane, its rear tires half buried in snow. Hazard lights blinked weakly, orange flashes swallowed by the storm. The hood was crumpled, steam ghosting upward where heat met cold air. Jack slowed to a stop several yards back. Through the curtain of snow, he saw a woman struggling at the driver's side door. She was tall and slender, moving with urgency rather than grace, her dark coat flapping open in the wind. Strands of chestnut brown hair had slipped loose from a low tie, plastering against pale skin already reddened by cold. Her face held sharp lines, not from age but from strain, the look of someone used to making decisions quickly and living with consequences. Inside the car, a child cried. The sound cut through the storm, thin but unmistakable. The woman reached into the back seat, bracing herself against the doorframe as she tugged at a seatbelt jammed tight. Her gloved hands shook, more from fear than cold. She glanced up once, eyes wide, scanning the empty road as if hoping someone would appear. Jack opened his door. The wind hit him hard, driving snow against his face, filling the silence with a roar. Ranger was out instantly, paws sinking into the drift as he took position half a step behind Jack's left leg. Not in front, not pulling ahead. Exactly where he was meant to be. The woman turned at the sound, relief flashing across her features when she saw another vehicle. It faltered when she took in Jack's size, the set of his shoulders, the stillness in the way he stood. Jack raised one hand, palm open, a simple signal meant to calm, not command. "I've got you," he said, voice low and even, carrying through the wind. "Where's he stuck?" "My son," the woman replied, words tumbling out fast. "The door won't open. The belt's jammed." She did not scream. She did not collapse. There was strength there, buried beneath fear, the kind that came from responsibility rather than bravado. Jack nodded once and moved forward. That was when headlights appeared behind them. Another vehicle rolled up slow, too slow for the conditions. A battered pickup, dark paint, no visible markings. It stopped at an angle that blocked the road instead of clearing it. Ranger noticed first. His head turned, ears angling back toward the new arrival. His body shifted, weight redistributing, presence suddenly heavier, denser. 3 men climbed out. They wore thick jackets and knit caps pulled low, faces rough, movements loose in a way that spoke of alcohol or overconfidence. One of them laughed as he stamped his feet against the cold. Another scanned the scene, eyes lingering too long on the woman, on the open car, on the panic that had not yet hardened into anger. Jack did not move. He stood between the sedan and the woman now, body angled just enough to block the child from view. Ranger sat at his side, silent, watching. The men took a step closer, then another. Something in the air changed. It was subtle, the way danger often is just before it announces itself. Jack felt it settle into his chest, old and familiar. Ranger felt it too. The dogs, gaze locked onto the nearest man, not aggressive, not wild, simply focused. Jack spoke without raising his voice. "Stand behind me," he said to the woman. She obeyed without question. Ranger rose smoothly to his feet and stepped forward exactly half a pace. That was all it took. The men slowed, uncertain now, sensing something they could not name. They were used to fear. They were not used to restraint. And in the middle of a blizzard, on an empty winter road, restraint was far more dangerous. Fake, rescue, group, Benkang Ku Gansung, Milwaukee. Snow drifted sideways off the river, piling against abandoned warehouses and rusted loading docks that had not seen honest work in years. The battered pickup stopped too close for comfort. Its headlights stayed on, high beams cutting through the storm, like a challenge rather than a courtesy. The engine kept running, a low growl that matched the mood of the men stepping out. There were 3 of them. The first was stocky, thick through the neck and shoulders, his beard uneven and patchy as if trimmed without care. His nose leaned slightly to one side, broken long ago and never set right. He smiled easily, the kind of smile meant to disarm, not reassure. The second was taller and thinner, cheeks hollow, eyes restless, darting between Jack, Emily, and the car like a scavenger deciding where to feed first. The third lagged half a step behind, younger than the others, jaw clenched tight, hands buried deep in his pockets. He smelled strongly of alcohol even from a distance. They wore heavy jackets with no logos, boots crusted with ice, gloves that looked more decorative than useful. Men who wanted to look like workers without doing the work. "Evening," the stocky one called out, voice loud over the wind. "Bad spot to break down." Emily tightened her grip on Ben's coat. Up close, she looked more fragile than she wanted to admit. She was tall but slender, built more for boardrooms than roadside emergencies. Her skin was pale now, freckles standing out against the cold, lips tinged faintly blue. Her dark brown hair had slipped loose from its tie completely, whipping around her face. But her eyes stayed sharp, focused on her son first, then on Jack. "We didn't call for help," she said quickly. The stocky man laughed, spreading his hands. "Didn't need to. We patrolled this stretch. Lucky for you." Jack didn't answer. He had shifted his stance slightly, placing himself squarely between the men and Emily, his body angled so Ranger remained visible. The dog sat at Jack's left side, head level, ears forward, gaze fixed on the stocky man's hands. Snow collected along Ranger's back, melting slowly against his heat. The thin man stepped closer, boots crunching on ice. "Road's dangerous tonight," he said, eyes sliding to Emily's purse on the passenger seat. "Company policy says we tow immediately. Liability and all that." "Company?" Jack asked. It was the first word he had spoken to them. His voice was calm, almost conversational, but it carried weight. The stocky man's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "North Shore Recovery," the man said. "You can check us out." Jack glanced at the truck. No markings, no numbers, no attempt to look legitimate beyond the lie itself. Ranger rose smoothly to his feet, not abruptly, not aggressively, just enough to change the geometry of the moment. The white patch on his harness caught. The headlight glare. The words impossible to miss. Service dog, do not pet. The younger man swallowed and shifted his weight back. The thin man ignored the dog and moved toward the sedan, peering through the broken window. "We'll need her signature," he said, already reaching into his jacket. He produced a clipboard wrapped in plastic, paper inside smeared and damp. "Standard release. Towing fees higher in storms." Emily shook her head. "I don't have cash." "That's fine," the stocky man said. "We hold the car until payment clears. Storage adds up quick." Ben whimpered. Jack felt it then. The familiar tightening in his chest, not anger, not fear, recognition. He had seen this pattern in other places, under other names. Predators did not always carry weapons. Sometimes they carried paperwork. He took one step forward. The wind howled louder, as if the city itself were holding its breath. "Step away from the vehicle," Jack said. The stocky man scoffed. "You some kind of cop?" "No." "Then mind your business." Ranger took one deliberate step forward, placing his body between Jack and the thin man now edging closer to Emily. The dog's posture was textbook. Head low, eyes up, still as stone. Not a growl, not a sound, just presence. Jack didn't raise his voice. "This ends now." The thin man laughed nervously and made a mistake. He reached toward Ranger, fingers outstretched, as if to test apparently calm waters. Everything happened fast, but clean. Ranger snapped to full height in a blink, teeth bared for the briefest instant, stopping inches from the man's hand. No contact, no bite, just a warning so clear it felt physical. The thin man stumbled back, slipping on ice, landing hard on his tailbone with a shout of pain. The stocky man lunged forward, instinct overriding sense. Jack moved. He caught the man's arm, twisted, and redirected momentum with practiced efficiency. The motion was controlled, precise, learned in places where chaos was constant. The man hit the ground hard, breath knocked clean out of him, face pressed into snow and ice. Jack released immediately and stepped back. Ranger returned to his place at Jack's side without command. The younger man froze, hands still in his pockets, eyes wide now. He looked from his fallen companions to Jack, then to the dog, recalculating everything he thought he knew about easy prey. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint but real. Emily stared, heart pounding. Jack had not thrown a punch, had not shouted, had not chased. He had simply ended it. Police lights cut through the storm minutes later. 2 officers stepped out, cautious but alert. One was tall, broad-shouldered, his face ruddy from cold, name tag reading Officer Daniel Hayes, mid-30s, the kind of cop who listened before speaking. The other, Officer Marissa Klein, shorter, dark-haired, sharp-eyed, assessed the scene quickly, gaze lingering on the clipboard, in the snow. "What happened here?" Hayes asked. Emily spoke first. Her voice shook, but she did not falter. She told the truth, all of it. Klein picked up the paperwork, brow furrowing as she read. Hayes checked the pickup's plates and frowned. "These guys again," he muttered. Jack gave a brief statement. No embellishment, no drama. Ranger sat, unmoving, snow frosting his ears. The officers cuffed the men. The stocky one glared at Jack, hate simmering behind fear. Jack met his gaze without expression. The thin man wouldn't look at Ranger at all. As the police cars pulled away, Emily exhaled shakily. She looked down at Ben, then back at Jack. "Thank you," she said. "They would have taken everything." Jack nodded once. "Get him home. Roads will be worse soon." Ranger's eyes tracked the departing lights until they vanished into white. The storm closed in again, but the road was no longer empty. Restrained power. The snow did not stop falling. It only grew quieter, as if the storm itself were listening. Jack Mercer stood beneath the flickering streetlight, its pale glow carving sharp lines into the ice-coated pavement. The city around them felt distant now, reduced to breath, snow, and the subtle geometry of threat. This was the moment where situations tipped, where fear chose a direction. The remaining 2 men had not run. That told Jack everything. Predators who retreated quickly were amateurs. These were men who believed pressure would still work, even when the balance had shifted. Especially then. The younger one, the one who had frozen earlier, reached into the truck and came back with a short metal tool, flat and heavy, a glass breaker. Cheap, effective. He held it low, trying to look casual, as if tools did not always reveal intent. The stocky man, now back on his feet, spat blood into the snow and smiled again. The smile had changed. It was thinner, sharper, stripped of charm. Rage had replaced confidence. "You think you scared us?" he said. "You think a dog makes you untouchable?" Jack did not answer. He guided Emily and Ben backward, step by careful step, until they stood fully within the cone of the streetlight. Light mattered. Witness mattered. Emily understood immediately and did not argue. She pulled Ben close, one arm around his shoulders, the other gripping his coat. Her breathing was shallow, fast, but she stayed upright. Ben trembled. Jack knelt slightly, just enough to meet the boy's eye level. He placed a firm hand on Ben's shoulder, not squeezing, not patting, grounding. "Look at me," Jack said quietly. Ben did. "Breathe with me," Jack continued. "Slow." Jack counted softly. Ranger moved closer, pressing his warm flank against Ben's leg. The dog's presence was steady, deliberate. Ben's breathing slowed, matching Jack's rhythm without him realizing it. Behind them, boots scraped against ice. The man with the glass breaker took a step forward. He angled toward Ranger. That was the mistake. He laughed under his breath, lifting the tool slightly. "Bet he ain't trained for this." Jack spoke one word. "Don't." The man ignored it. Ranger rose to full height. The transformation was instant and unmistakable. His shoulders broadened as muscle engaged, neck thickening as his head lifted. The amber in his eyes darkened, focus narrowing to a single point. He did not bark. He did not growl. Silence, sharpened. The patch on his harness caught the light again. "Service dog. Do not pet." The man's hand hovered inches from Ranger's space. Ranger stepped forward, just one step. The distance vanished. Teeth flashed, not snapping, not striking. A promise, not an action. The man jerked back as if burned. His laugh died in his throat. "Jesus," he muttered. The stocky man snarled and lunged. It happened fast. Jack pivoted, stepping into the man's momentum. He caught the forearm, rotated his hips, and applied pressure at exactly the wrong angle. There was no wasted movement, no flourish. The technique was clean, efficient, designed to end resistance without ending a life. The man went down hard, face first, the air driven from his lungs in a sharp, animal sound. Pain locked him in place. Jack released immediately and stepped back. The third man raised the tool again, panic now overriding bravado. He took one step toward Emily. Ranger blocked the path, not charging, not attacking, just occupying space with authority. The man stopped. Every instinct screamed that crossing that invisible line would be a decision he would never undo. Sirens cut through the night. This time, closer. Red and blue light washed over the snow, scattering shadows. The men sagged, shoulders dropping, the fight draining out of them as reality returned. Jack did not relax until the patrol cars stopped and doors opened. Officer Daniel Hayes exited first, breath fogging, posture alert. Behind him, Officer Marissa Klein scanned the scene, her eyes already cataloging positions, distances, injuries. They took control quickly. The glass breaker hit the ground with a dull clink. Hands went behind backs. Cuffs snapped shut. Emily sagged slightly once it was over, adrenaline finally releasing its grip. Jack steadied her with a light touch at her elbow, then stepped away. He gave people space when they needed it. He had learned that the hard way. Ranger sat at Jack's side, snow gathering on his ears, gaze calm again, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Officer Klein approached Jack. "You okay?" Jack nodded. She glanced at Ranger. "He yours?" "Yes." "Well trained," she said, with respect, not curiosity. Hayes returned with paperwork and a grim look. "They're tied to 2 other incidents this month. Same setup, same play." Emily closed her eyes briefly. Relief and anger tangled together. Jack listened, silent. When the officers finished, Jack turned back to Emily and Ben. "Get home," he said. "Tonight's done enough damage." Emily met his eyes. In the streetlight, her face looked older than before, harder, but steadier too. "Thank you," she said. "Both of you." Ranger's tail moved once against the snow. Jack nodded and turned away before gratitude could become something heavier. Behind him, the storm resumed its steady fall, but the balance had shifted. and the men who hunted in the dark had learned something they would not forget. Truth in the blizzard, morning did not arrive cleanly. It seeped in through a sky the color of steel, light, dull, and reluctant, as if the night were still deciding whether to let go. Jack Mercer stood at his kitchen window, mug cooling in his hand, watching snow drift past the glass. Ranger lay near the door, head up, ears alert, tracking sounds Jack no longer tried to hear. The city felt quieter after a storm like that. Not peaceful, just subdued. Emily Carter arrived just after 8. She looked different in daylight, still tall and slender, but her posture had changed. The panic of the night before had settled into something firmer. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly now, revealing a pale face with faint freckles across the bridge of her nose. Her coat was tailored but practical, a woman used to choosing function over display. She carried herself like someone accustomed to being listened to, even when she did not feel ready to speak. Ben stayed close to Ranger, fingers resting in the thick fur along the dog's shoulder. The boy was quieter than the night before, eyes heavy but calmer. Ranger allowed the contact without acknowledgement, steady as a piece of furniture that breathed. Emily took a seat at Jack's table. She wrapped both hands around the coffee he set in front of her, as if grounding herself in the warmth. "They weren't just 3 men," she said finally. "I know that now." Jack nodded. He had already known. Emily worked in logistics, systems, routes, contracts. She understood patterns the way Jack understood terrain. What she described came out measured, controlled, but each sentence carried weight. "They target storms," she continued, "late hours, places where people hesitate to call for help. They pressure you into signing something you don't fully read. Then they keep the car. Or worse." Jack listened without interruption. "They film sometimes," she added quietly. "Threaten to release it. Or they dig up addresses, schools." Ben stiffened at the word. Ranger shifted closer, pressing his body lightly against the boy's leg. Ben relaxed again, fingers tightening in the fur. Jack leaned back in his chair. "Police will build a case," he said, "but it takes more than one night." Emily met his eyes. "They'll come after me." It was not fear speaking. It was calculation. Jack did not soften the truth. "Yes." Silence settled between them. Emily looked at Ben, then at Ranger. The dog lifted his head slightly, eyes calm, unblinking. Strength without threat, presence without noise. "What if I don't testify?" she asked. Jack chose his words carefully. "Then someone else will end up on that road. Someone without witnesses. Someone who signs because they don't know better." Emily closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, there was resolve there, thin but real. "I'll do it," she said. The police interview took place later that day at a precinct, near the river. The building was old brick, worn smooth by decades of winters. Detective Sarah Whitman conducted the questioning. Sarah was in her early 40s, average height, lean build, with short blonde hair cut close to her jaw. Her skin was fair, weathered by long hours and longer cases. She wore her badge without ceremony. Her eyes missed very little. Years earlier, a corruption case she had pushed too hard had cost her a promotion. It had also taught her exactly how pressure worked. She listened to Emily carefully, never interrupting, never rushing. Jack sat against the far wall, arms crossed, Ranger at his feet. He did not speak unless asked. He did not need to. His presence was enough to remind anyone watching that intimidation would not come cheap. Whitman slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs, paperwork, grainy stills from dock cameras. "We think the operation runs through a garage on the south side," she said. "Calvin Rourke." The name landed with weight. Rourke was in his late 50s, broad-faced, thick-jowled, with silver threaded through his beard. A man who smiled easily in public and leaned hard in private. He owned 3 garages, all legitimate on paper. He sponsored youth sports, donated to campaigns. He had survived every investigation so far by never touching victims directly. "Your testimony matters," Whitman said. "It gives us leverage." Emily nodded. "Then use it." Word traveled fast. By evening, Jack noticed a sedan idling across the street from his building. Engine running, lights off. It stayed for 10 minutes, then 20. Ranger noticed it too. The dog rose and stood at the window, posture alert but controlled. Jack joined him, watching the shape through the snow. The car rolled forward slowly, then stopped again. Jack did not approach. He did not confront. He turned on the porch light and stepped into view, Ranger at his side. The harness patch caught the glow instantly. Service dog. Do not pet. The sedan backed away. No threats were made. None were needed. That night, Emily received her first anonymous message. No words, just a photo of her building taken from across the street. She forwarded it to Whitman without comment. "This is how it starts," Whitman said later, "and how it ends." The next morning, warrants were issued. The garage was raided before sunrise. Records seized, vehicles impounded, cameras unplugged. Rourke was not arrested that day. Men like him rarely were, but the storm had shifted. Jack walked Emily and Ben to their car after the interview. Snow crunched beneath their feet. The air was sharp, clean. "Thank you," Emily said again. This time it sounded different. Less relief, more resolve. Jack nodded once. "Do what's right," he said. The rest follows. Ranger sat between them, calm as ever, eyes scanning the street. The blizzard had uncovered more than ice. It had uncovered truth. And truth, once exposed, did not freeze easily. Justice and redemption. The snow returned quietly that week, not as a storm, but as a reminder. Emily Carter noticed the car on the third night. It sat across the street from her townhouse, lights off, engine idling low enough to blend into the winter hum. At first glance, it could have been anyone, a neighbor, a delivery driver lost in the wrong block. But Emily had learned what patterns felt like. She stood at the window, tall and still, her dark hair loose over a gray sweater, watching the shape through the glass until her breath fogged it. Ben slept upstairs. Emily did not call the police right away, not out of fear, out of certainty. Whoever sat in that car wanted her to feel alone. She reached for her phone anyway. Jack Mercer answered on the second ring. "I see it too," he said. 10 minutes later, Jack arrived without sirens, without noise. He parked down the block and walked the rest of the way. Ranger moved at his side, paws silent on packed snow, black and tan coat dusted white, harness snug against his powerful frame. Jack stopped beneath the glow of Emily's porch light. He did not hide. He stood where he could be seen. The navy coat hung heavy on his shoulders, collar turned up against the cold. The red and black flannel beneath caught the light when the wind shifted it open. He looked exactly as he always did. Not threatening, not inviting, simply present. Ranger sat beside him, head up, ears forward, still. Across the street, the sedan's engine note changed. The driver's door opened a crack, then closed again. Jack did nothing. He understood men like Calvin Rourke did not need confrontation. They needed certainty, a clear boundary, an unspoken calculation that said this was no longer a safe game. The car pulled away. Emily exhaled for the first time in minutes. She stepped onto the porch, wrapping her coat tighter around herself. Up close, she looked tired. The sharp lines around her eyes had deepened, but there was steel beneath it now, a steadiness she had not carried before the storm. "Thank you," she said quietly. Jack shook his head once. "You're doing the hard part." Ranger glanced at her, then back to the street, attention never fully leaving the dark. The pressure did not stop after that night. Anonymous messages came and went. Silent calls, a note left under her wiper that said nothing at all. Emily documented everything. She did not respond. She prayed in the simplest way she knew how. Not for safety alone, but for the courage to keep going. Detective Sarah Whitman kept her word. The case moved faster than Calvin Rourke expected. Search warrants expanded. Financial records were pulled apart line by line. Mechanics who had stayed silent for years began to talk once they realized someone was finally listening. A tow operator named Mark Ellison, early 50s, broad-backed with hands permanently stained by oil, testified about falsified invoices and staged recoveries. His voice shook, but he did not stop. "I got kids," he said on the stand. "I thought keeping my head down was protecting them. I was wrong." Calvin Rourke watched from the defense table. He wore a tailored suit that could not hide the thickness of his neck or the way his jaw clenched when witnesses spoke. His beard was neatly trimmed now, gray threaded carefully through black. A man trying to look respectable after years of hiding behind others. Emily met his gaze once. She did not look away. Jack sat in the back of the courtroom, Ranger lying at his feet. Dogs were not allowed inside during testimony, but the judge had made an exception for breaks after security concerns were raised. Ranger's presence in the hallways changed the tone. Men who lingered too long found reasons to leave. Jack said little. He did not need to. When the verdict came, it arrived without drama. Guilty, extortion, fraud, witness intimidation. The sentence followed weeks later. Calvin Rourke was led away without looking back. His garages were shuttered. The operation dissolved quickly once its center collapsed. Winter continued, but the streets felt different. Neighbors spoke to each other more. Calls were made sooner. When unfamiliar trucks prowled during storms, people noticed. People acted. Emily lost her car. She lost weeks of sleep. She lost the illusion that doing well meant being safe. What she gained was harder to name. Ben stood beside her one evening as snow drifted softly through the streetlight. He had grown quieter since the storm, but not smaller. He had learned something most children did not learn so young. "Is Ranger scary?" he asked once. Emily smiled gently. "Only if you're doing something wrong." Ranger thumped his tail once against the floor. Jack returned to his routines. Morning walks, quiet meals, long nights where memory pressed in but no longer ruled him. The weight he carried had shifted, not gone, just shared. He stood one evening outside Emily's home, watching Ben shovel snow with exaggerated seriousness. Ranger sat beside him, eyes soft now, danger at rest. Jack thought of places where power had been loud and destructive, of choices made too late. This time, he had not turned away. The blizzard had not spared anyone, but it had revealed who they were willing to become. Sometimes God does not stop the storm. Sometimes he sends strength into it, a steady hand that does not turn away, a quiet courage that chooses what is right, even when it is costly, a presence that protects the weak, not with noise, but with resolve. In our own lives, we face smaller storms every day, moments when it would be easier to look away, to stay silent, to wait for someone else to act. This story reminds us that miracles are often born in those moments, when fear is met with faith, when restraint becomes strength, when love chooses action instead of delay. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from. And if you believe in stories that heal, guide, and restore faith, please subscribe to the channel so we can continue this journey together. May God watch over you and your loved ones. May he protect you on every road you travel. And may he place quiet miracles in your life exactly when you need them most.